A warm welcome to our session about the specifics. We would like to speak about the green and co-determined transformation in the steel industry. So I would like to welcome everyone who's joining us here and online. First of all, have your smartphones ready because this is what you will need right now. So use your phones. This is expressly allowed. And for those who are joining us digitally, we also have a chat. During the session, you can ask your questions in the chat. And Jansen, who is actually a specialist in ThyssenKrupp Steel's Works Council, is now collecting all the questions for the discussion. And what is happening right now is the most important aspect. When it comes to green steel and worker participation, I would like to welcome Daniela Jansen from IG Metall Workers Union. She is in charge of ThyssenKrupp AG and a member of the supervisory board. And to my right, I would like to welcome the General Works Council member of our ThyssenKrupp Steel. And he's the chairman, Tekin Nasikkol. A warm welcome to you. You are also the chairman of the Group Works Council of ThyssenKrupp AG. This is important to note because it's not so long that you have been appointed, and you are also a member of the supervisory board. Great to have you here. My name is Melanie Frerichs. I come from the executive board of the DGB, and I am moderating this today. So now you know who we are. And I would like to know who is watching us today. I can see some of you and some faces are familiar, but I don't know anyone in the digital realm. So this is why we have prepared a Mentimeter. For this, you use your smartphone. You can scan the QR code with your camera, or you can go to the website menti.com. And the code is 7338 1125. And I can repeat this, 7338 1125. And maybe Jansen can also post this in the chat, the Menti code, because now we have live images as we watch. And if we have not yet created your category, we also have the category of interested persons. That was a great category because we're kind of interested, all of us, aren't we? So for this, we're going to take a minute or two. The first bar is a member of a works council, and I know that there are more here who are members of a works council. And the second one was a trade union secretary. So apparently the trade unionists are heavily represented here. We also have researchers, and we have managers and advisors and journalists and interested parties. So there are quite some more joining us on the Mentimeter. Great, thank you. I think this really gives us a good overview of the faces we are looking at right now. And with this, I would like to give you an overview of what is going to happen next. We will kick off with an input of Tekin. He will present the examples and challenges of our practical example. After that, we are going to start a discussion with Daniela, and then also go beyond the company itself. And we might have time for questions and observations from the plenary or from the digital chat after that. But let us not linger for longer and give Tekin the floor. You have the floor and you have 10 minutes. Yes, exactly. So that is pretty challenging for such a big and broad topic, but I will try my very best. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me and a warm welcome. Let me start with the title of my presentation, On the Way to Green Steel with Effective Co-Determination or Worker Participation. And what I can think of first is our slogan, and that was steel is steel is the future. And that is a slogan that was kind of accompanying us throughout the entire struggle throughout the past 3 to 4 years. Whenever we were at events or demonstrations, this is the slogan we used. Why did we choose this? And why did we opt for this? This is something you will hear about certainly in the context of my presentation. So to start with, on the dimension of what we are currently going through in the steel industry, the German steel industry is facing the biggest transformation in its more than 200-year-old history. 200 years of steel production with the coal, etc. And now out of coal dust, we are going to generate hydrogen. I find this is a great quote of Daniela Jansen, and this is why I also used it for my presentation, because we are facing a future where carbon is no longer what we emit into the atmosphere, but our kilns will slowly but surely be decommissioned. And in the best case, they are going to be replaced by so-called direct reduction systems. And here in Duisburg, as the largest steel producing location in Europe, we emit 20 million units of CO2. So the good news is that with a technical solution, we can reduce our carbon emissions to zero. So this is the good news. And our carbon reduction goals are by 2030, we would like to reduce carbon by 30%. By 2045, we want to be down to zero CO2 emissions. But this is still quite a long journey, and I would like to describe what we did so far. But before that, let me give you an overview of our company where I'm working at, even though I'm not going to speak about the entire group, but the steel business. We have 26,000 employees. We had a number of restructuring measures, and just thinking of the past and Duisburg alone, in the location I work in, we had 13,000 employees, or have them right now. And in the past, we had up to 40,000 employees and workers who worked there. But we have doubled our capacities. With 13,000 heads, we could double our capacities. This certainly has to do with the fact that we have more efficient furnaces these days. And we have a turnover of 13.2 billion, and we have steel production of 10.5 million tons. So Salzgitter is the second largest producer, and we are the largest producer by far. Duisburg is a steel city. So here you can see our product range down here, and I would just like to mention two aspects, because we're also speaking about climate change and that we want to have a climate neutral future. And steel is providing the basis for this. Without steel, there will not be a green transformation. Why not? Because no generator, no wind turbine can work without steel. So when it comes to electrical steel, we are the prerequisite for really having a wind turbine or wind generator work. And the same holds true for e-cars and e-mobility. Without the steel that we produce, in the quality we produce, the automotive industry will not be able to manage the energy transition and to start this energy transition, at least not in Germany. So the green transformation can significantly contribute to reaching our carbon goals. And of course, wherever you emit a lot of CO2, you can also save a lot of CO2. And did we figure this out ourselves? Well, if the legislative environment hadn't changed or the political willingness within the population, then our companies would have certainly continued to work and produce with the traditional furnaces. But by comparison to Chinese companies or others, these are the most efficient, the cleanest furnaces. But these are the auxiliaries, the systems that emit most of the CO2. So the regulatory environment changed drastically. Political decisions, the Paris Climate Agreement or Fit for 55, the Climate Action Program of Germany, all of this changed, and therefore the business model of steel is completely transformed by political decisions. If we don't start with a climate neutral future today, I can tell you that the steel industry in Germany, or at least we would have to opt out. There's no alternative to starting a green transformation because the regulatory environment does not allow for some other option. But the good news is this is also technically possible. CO2 impact of the steel industry. The steel industry has a share of 7% of the total CO2 emissions in Germany. This is quite a lot. And of course, with a lot of investment, you can really make a difference. You can reduce by 7% or 25% of the entirety of North Rhine-Westphalia, our federal state. So if I could help transform, then I already have 1/4 of my CO2 emissions that I have reduced for my region. So that is a great lever. So green transformation, what is the innovation? I said furnaces are going to be replaced by direct reduction systems. They look the same, but they are more efficient, and they are also running on hydrogen and not on carbon, and this is why we are more efficient. And I have seen such a production facility already in Abu Dhabi. This is not rocket science. This is not something that could not be done with German engineering, but it's run on natural gas, but we want to do this with hydrogen. These facilities with us are going to be hydrogen powered. So that is the innovative part. Germany would be the first country that is operating direct reduction systems with hydrogen. And then we also have some additional innovative equipment that we can use. And if I speak about hydrogen, I think we need green hydrogen mostly, and a lot of it. And this is going to trigger a push, everything to do with infrastructure or other momentum that can be generated that is then going to generate growth. So with us as the largest hydrogen consumer, we are going to solve many other investment issues of other industries, be it into the grids, be it into the infrastructure, transport network, electrolyzers. Duisburg has the potential, as well as North Rhine-Westphalia, to make it to become a hydrogen capital. We used to be the carbon or charcoal capital, the dark side, the gray side, and these days it could be the hydrogen capital. So these are very good prospects if all of this works, but nothing comes for free. And this transformation should not only have ecological aspects, it also has to be socio-ecological. We're speaking about people because people are afraid of their future. They want to keep their jobs, and they wonder what is going to happen to these jobs. And in the context of these struggles, we needed a lot of support by the political level. This transformation needs to be accompanied by funding, but also by the respective regulatory environment. And here you can see a couple of photos. We had activities with the Minister President, our state premier at the regional level. Then we also have the SMS group that awarded us some contracts, and this is a German company. The money that is spent remains in Germany and creates jobs. We also had the Chancellor, our federal Chancellor, who took a first-hand look, and we convinced him that it was so important to get this transformation done. And then we had our President Steinmeier and the Minister of Economic Affairs, Habeck. So there were so many important people that came to our site. But at the end of the day, we needed funding and the funding permit. And after that, we had all the red tape, all the bureaucracy that followed. So there was the political will, there was the legislation in place. But once this was about delivering on one's promises, this is very, very slow, especially the political level. And this is kind of a lot of red tape. We lost a lot of time because of it. And I said, we need a ministry for transformation and not a ministry for complication. And what I experienced there was a ministry of complication. So we had to launch a Steel Action Day, and we had almost 12,000 angry steel workers that demonstrated there. And I just lifted my hammer, my steel hammer, as a symbol that the steel workers are angry. And Minister Habeck was there, and he said, okay, he was going to promise and he was going to deliver right now. And a couple of days later, finally, we received the funding authorization and approval. So we were asking for this for so many years, and then we asked for 2 billion, and then it says 1.999. So you can see how bureaucratic Germany is. At the end of the day, they were not in a position to make this 2 billion. Somebody calculated this. Nobody knows what they calculated, and this is the sum we received. But now we can start.
For me, it's important that the money that we receive is not just a gift we receive, but it is supposed to promote the green hydrogen infrastructure. So if we should not use this hydrogen at the end of the day, for whatever reason, we even would have to return these 2 billion. So this is not something we're gifted with, because oftentimes in the public discussion, they say, oh, these steel workers, they just have to say something and get money. No, this is an investment into the future. This is well invested money because, first of all, it's about climate protection. It's about securing jobs. It's about adding value, the value-added chain in Germany, as well as a momentum for further growth, specifically when it comes to hydrogen and energy supply, as well as other things. And then this is the role of co-determination. And this is our area of influence. Was it the managers who did it? Was it the managers that gave us access to the 2 billion? Surely they made a contribution. I'm not trying to play that down, not at all. But I am very convinced that co-determination made a major contribution to this. So the Works Council, first of all, had to convince the people to come along this journey, to get them on board, because they're concerned and they do not know whether their jobs will be secured into the future. And then we had to say, well, if we don't do this, your job definitely will be gone. So we had to advocate a lot and gain people's trust and confidence. And if this is deceived, because at some point in time, the politicians do not support us anymore, then this is not good. It's also politically seen not positive. So we kicked this off, brought things going, and that's important, but please don't leave it at that, because otherwise the transformation will not really be a transformation, but only a first step towards transformation. People are concerned and anxious about the future. And also in the supervisory boards, you can probably imagine that the representatives of workers are in favor of these projects, but the shareholders want to have the security. If we don't know what the price is, what about the energy supply? What about the political situation? Will there be further subsidies, yes or no? And if this is not clear, no shareholder in the supervisory board will make a decision in favor. So we truly had a lot to contribute. We had to work hard so that this decision was taken in the supervisory board. This is not always easy, because sometimes they say, take a look at this. There are so many uncertainties. Based on all of these uncertainties, we cannot make such a major investment decision. And then I said, well, we have to, because even though there are insecurities and uncertainties, we have to take the journey into this field. And we are from the Ruhr area, which is characterized and seen equivalent of carbon and steel. And they always say this is old economy. Carbon has disappeared, steel can disappear tomorrow. But I can tell you this, each and every one of you per year would consume 420 kilos of steel. So you cannot imagine society without steel. And this is the foundation of the further economic activities of the Federal Republic of Germany. And that is why it was good that IG Metall had a good, positive image campaign made steel more likable and socially acceptable, also on behalf of the politicians. And this was their slogan, "Steel is the future." And with this, I will come to an end. And I will say that I'm convinced of the fact that steel will have a future, a green future. Thank you very much. Well, this was exactly to the point. That was swift, wasn't it? Yes. I have never seen anyone be that swift. I forgot one comment before because I hear that there's interpretation going on because this session was chosen as one session that there's interpretation into English. I hope that's worth the while and that there are people who make use of this and listen to the interpretation. Tekin, you described how co-determination can work in light of such a remarkable transformation that we see in steel industry, which somehow seems so old-fashioned, but is highly technological. Yes, and it has a green future, exactly, and also has a green future. And this raises awareness as to that this is the start of value-added chains. But where are uncertainties here? Well, to be honest, the uncertainties still lie in the political field. We now have received the subsidy notice for the first direct reduction plant. So we have clarity and certainty, but we have 3 in the north and 2 in the south of Duisburg. So the next steps, whether they will receive subsidies and support, still has not been answered at this point in time, and I cannot give you a satisfactory answer. So what will the future subsidy landscape look like, and what will the regulatory environment look like? I could talk about the industrial energy prices, etc., but these are very relevant topics that we're looking into at this point. Will politics continue to accompany the transformation and support it? And will it continue to set a frame? Because if it doesn't, the industry cannot work. We need to have a secure framework. As an observer, I always enjoy that too. So a very quick Q&A. As a moderator, I am allowed now to moderate a quick Q&A. So I would like to have a very quick Q&A round with you. I will ask you the question quickly, and you very quickly have to give an answer. Okay, very quickly. Biggest obstacle. This will be the subsidy notice, bureaucracy, infrastructure, hydrogen, energy price. The biggest opponent. Currently, the government, Olaf Scholz, I'm sorry, I have to say this, and Lindner on one side and Habeck on the other side. There's no unity, no consensus amongst the political leaders. The most difficult thing, well, that the social aspect is not equivalent, not treated on the same level as the economy, as the environment, and that is why value-added chains can go abroad. The most surprising supporter. Oh, interesting. I would say all of the climate activists. They have never come to us, and I'm not asking them to do that, but those with the highest CO2 emissions, that's us. But they never came to see us, never had a rally. They never glued themselves to the pavement in front of our plant. If they do come, I'm up for discussion, but that the fact that they did not come is proof of the fact that they know how difficult it is and that we can make a huge contribution not only to climate protection, but to preserve the industry and secure jobs. And I think that they understood this, so they are the biggest supporters, the biggest advocates. Oh, thank you very much. Now we have the, well, not the problem, but Luisa Neubauer would have been here if there would not be the parallel session in the other room. She has to participate in the panel. Now I would like to talk to Daniela. You are head of project for the hydrogen strategy of IG Metall, which may come as a surprise to some which are not familiar with the world of trade unions. The fact that a union has such a project. So the hydrogen strategy project. Why is it something trade unions have, and what do you do? Well, question one is easy to answer. What's special here is that we do not only focus on the steel industry, even though, of course, here there's a leverage, the biggest influence. So from the beginning, IG Metall said that we also agree with the Paris Climate Accord. It is our goal to preserve a planet worth living for ourselves, for our children. And that is, on the other hand, also why we have to prevent the industrialization. So from the very beginning, we thought of not only bringing steel on board, but utility vehicles, rail vehicles, as well as air traffic and sea traffic. And we thought that if we do not involve all of them, then there would be a competitive struggle and all of our members will lose, no one will win. Why does IG Metall do this? This is a very justified question because you could think hydrogen, this is something having to do with chemicals. Why is it not ICBC? We do this because we consider hydrogen, we do not only need hydrogen as energy supply for steel, but we also have our machine engineers constructing facilities that are used to manufacture machines that lead to electrolyzing machines that are needed to produce hydrogen. Alstom and Siemens Mobility and Rail, together with many other companies, are companies which also would manufacture drives in this field, and hydrogen will be used. Also thinking of utility vehicles. Our colleague of Emma Amtrak and BAS last year said in 2030, there will be a 10% proportion that we will have in heavy traffic trucks, which require hydrogen. So it's very diverse. Secondly, what is it that I do all day long? This is a justified question. No, I didn't really word it that way. Okay, but if that's what you ask me, well, the strategy of IG Metall consists of two components. First of all, it's political lobby work. Tekin already said this. If we don't stand together, if we don't demand things, this will not lead us in a viable future. So on the one hand side, it's a political campaigning, but we're lucky, and with our 2.2 million members, we also have a very strong foundation at our backs, which push us forward and tell us exactly what to do. That's why we designed the campaign in a way that we have prepared different information materials for our Works Council members. There's a movie, there are flyers, there are conferences that we hold, as well as an active working group. And these are the integral parts of the campaign. I very much enjoyed meeting twice already. This was a virtual meeting with 40 Works Council members from the whole of Germany. And they have a background in the automotive sector, steel, train, etc. And they all say, yes, we're somehow involved with hydrogen, but we do not know what the impact of it will be into the future on us. But we're firmly convinced that we will have to see it as an integral part. And I have been commissioned by IG Metall to bring all of this together to see to it that our demands would be part of the coalition negotiations which happened and would be implemented. And that's what I do all day long. Okay, well, then we know. Thank you very much. I would like to talk about the hydrogen economy. Tekin touched on this. So you have to take the first steps to kick this off. But hydrogen, as I said, oftentimes is something that you only see on PowerPoint slides, for example, on LinkedIn. But would you say that there's this one knot? If this is dissolved, everything will run smoothly, or there's one thing that would have to be done, and then we would have a competitive hydrogen economy in Germany and Europe? I don't think so. This would be too simple an answer. We're living in a complicated world. As Tekin said, just think of all of the authorization processes, the subsidy processes that would have to be streamlined and made easier. So the other thing would be that you would have to specifically promote this hydrogen field. I mean, thinking of the green steel that you manufacture, which is used in the automotive industry, then this accounts in a car for 180 to 300 euros if you use green instead of gray steel. And I once researched this. This is the price of one ambient lighting. So if you want to save on ambient lighting in your car and decide for green steel instead, it will be the same price at the end of the day for your vehicle. So it's important to say, once there would be more hydrogen used and more hydrogen produced, the prices will drop and everything will be at a sensible level. But as long as there would be no quota, no binding quota as to how much green steel would have to be used, everyone keeps back and is hesitant because they do not know whether the business model that they are promoting is economically viable. And these are two aspects that are personally very important to me. The other thing would be to promote these furnaces and to accelerate the authorization, the permit situation.
So let me now speak about the social aspects. Therefore, I have the following question. What are the biggest social challenges in the green transformation process? I believe the greatest insecurity is stirred if you don't really know what happens in the future with your workplace, with your wage, with your salary, because in all industries, because of hydrogen, things will change. And in some industries, this will be a lot. There will be a complete restructuring of the production. For example, this is what Tekin just mentioned. And here, employees need to get ready. When I started 3 years ago with the hydrogen project, I said at one conference, we want to look into further training, what you need for this. And I was just waiting for all the input. And then my colleagues just said, well, first of all, we'd like to have the hydrogen, and then the rest will just get done just like that. But this has really changed in the meantime. People are very concerned. They are also very committed to looking into this. And there are many initiatives that also try to team up with the local chambers of commerce and industry to see what kind of training could be developed. And this would certainly be one aspect to take away the insecurity. And we did a lot of workshops. In late August, I was in Saxony. I spoke to our colleagues from the Saxonian Steelworks, and they are not speaking about this huge transformation from a furnace to a direct reduction, but they are speaking about energy supply. How will they get energy in the future, and this at a reasonable price? And there we found out in a workshop that there are so many employees who are really uncertain about their future, and they don't have access to local politicians. And they can't tell them, what's going to happen with our jobs if prices go up even more. And through this workshop, we gave them the inspiration to have some kind of works meeting. And then you invite your local members of parliament, because next year we will have elections in the regions. And that was a really good idea. It's not a solution, but it's, some kind of immediate first step. To take away people's fears is so important so that they are empowered for their own future. Thank you very much. And because it's such a good favorite pastime, you also have the quick Q&A round. Get ready. Most promising energy source of the future, hydrogen. If you had said something different, then that would have been the application for your session in 2024. Okay, don't worry. What makes you fear about the future? The slowdown in the momentum when it comes to the development of infrastructure. And we always have to end on a positive note. So what makes you hopeful? The increasing presence of the topic in the debates, not only in the company, but also in politics. Just as the last long sentence, okay. At the hydrogen conference that we are going to have in November, we had one in 2021, but we had no political debate because we wanted to, first of all, find out what strategy we would like to have as IG Metall. Second hydrogen conference, we had one political representative from one political party. We had invited everyone apart from AFD. And in this conference, we have 2 times 2 representatives from governing parties. So we have to choose. And this is kind of the luxury we have nowadays. So that there is this kind of need or kind of attention that increases for this topic, and people cannot just ignore our invitations. Thank you very much. I asked all my questions. I have no more questions left. This means that now we have time to ask Jenan if there are questions in the chat. There are no questions so far. Are there questions in the plenary? Yes, there is a microphone for this, and my colleague is already coming to give you the microphone. The lady has a question first. Hello. First of all, thank you very much for giving us these insights. My name is Ruth, and I work with BUND. This is the Association for Environment and Nature Conservation. We also deal with hydrogen and steel production. And I'd like to know whether in your green steel discussions and also green hydrogen discussions, it is foreseeable that this is not going to be possible energy-wise. Producing hydrogen requires many renewable sources of energy. And even if we expand and develop renewables in the way it is foreseen, we will not have sufficient renewables to produce hydrogen for steel production or for other branches of industry that is green, that is. So maybe blue hydrogen would have to be used with the ecological problems associated with this. And this was not at all mentioned, but I think that this is what you're currently working with. So what is your position on this, and how do you assess this? So no green steel maybe in the foreseeable future? Let me start and tell you what we are planning with. We have an ambitious plan when it comes to hydrogen and green hydrogen. At the moment, what the steel industry would require in terms of green hydrogen does not exist. It's not out there, and it would have to be generated, first of all. Therefore, it is good that we say we are going to receive the direct reduction systems, and we are going to give a push, if you will, to the entire hydrogen market. And for producing green hydrogen, you need green electricity through electrolysis. And how much can you get in Germany? How much do you have to import? There are many discussions going on, and the goal is to have 1/3 of the green electricity demand to be covered by German green electricity production. This is the debate which is currently ongoing. So when will the green electricity be generated in sufficient quantities and at a competitive price? And at the moment, we are in a phase of uncertainty, because we do not only need green electricity, but also green hydrogen in order to be able to produce a green product. That is really difficult. So at the moment, the debate is currently on something else, that electricity prices are really high, and at the moment IG Metall is engaged in a debate this week. So I am convinced that the electricity price is the key to sustainable electricity production as fast as possible. How much green hydrogen will then be produced in Germany, and how fast we can increase this. We will have to start with blue hydrogen that is produced based on natural gas, and then through electrolysis, then we will use this blue hydrogen. But these measures already reduce the CO2 share by 40% and even more. Because there is not sufficient green hydrogen, we will have to ramp this up. And we have a very ambitious goal, but we actually don't really know when this is going to happen. That is, when we reach that goal. But we are the largest consumer, and therefore we need to have the political will, we need to have investment, we need to have infrastructure, the regulatory environment, and the bureaucracy permitting that is so complicated. If politicians do their homework, and if the industry in this phase of transformation and energy crisis is not let down, then hopefully industry is going to remain in Germany and we will get this managed. But these are the decisive years. The years up to 2030 are going to be decisive, and this has a lot to do with the political environment. If we have green hydrogen, we will have our machines from 2026 and we have the experience, then we are going to really produce steel with green hydrogen. But for this, we need green hydrogen. Yes, I can only subscribe to this. And in Germany, we will certainly not be able to produce these orders of magnitude. We will have to import hydrogen. We are waiting for the import strategy that was announced for this year in the autumn. It's starting right now, the autumn that is. We are assuming that 60 to 80% of hydrogen will have to be imported. This is why infrastructure was a very concerning topic for me, because initially this will have to be transported to us with vessels and then through a pipeline infrastructure. I am pretty positive about this. Minister Habeck is speaking with Norway, with the United Arab Emirates, with Morocco, and with all the routes that would be needed for transporting this. But we have not seen any plans how this is going to work. I am just being given the sign that there is a question on the chat. And before that, there is a question from the audience. You forgot something. You forgot aluminium. I work with an aluminium works, and we are melting this from scrap and using natural gas to produce aluminium. Yeah, one of the largest energy intensive companies you are working for, and this is why energy is the key. Maybe you can also pass the microphone to Jenan. Sorry, I could not hear you. I have a question from the digital realm. It's been addressed a couple of times. The difficulties with the procedures, the red tape, does this have to do with German regulations or European regulations? Question by Daniela. Well, good question. I think when it comes to requirements, to maximum complications, both are very much at par, but I am not the person who likes to play the blame game and complain that we have so much bureaucracy, because you should not forget that we rely on funding, subsidies, and subsidies are income generated from taxpayers' money or from economic activity. And then you cannot just say, oh, let's just give away that money. But you know, those permitting processes are so complicated. Why don't you write 2 billion on the check and not 1.9999 something? This is just nonsense, as the example was just given. And you know, those things happen all the time. There are so many players in the permitting processes, and they have a say. They are stakeholders, and their concerns also need to be taken into account. And this is something which is very important for our democracy, that we discuss everything. But, you know, at some point, we always have to call it a day. Yes, I would subscribe to this entirely. You know, for such a highly developed democracy, it is good to have, but when we speak about quick decision making, this is very difficult because we have to listen to so many people. We have to have everybody involved. But you cannot say Europe is the problem or Germany is the problem. Everybody has to do their homework. It is just such an exceptional situation. And once you are confronted with such a situation, you really have to move out of those old structures, be fast, move quickly, and try to be better. And this is a political thing. I always compare with America, you know, the Inflation Reduction Act. Biden just comes and just signs this, and then he says, that's the way we're doing it. And he's just giving so much money and so many subsidies and is just transforming his industry into a green industry with investment incentives. You know, and the industry in Germany and Europe, they say, oh, we're so slow over here. It's taking so long. I need to have a quick decision. And then the US is just overtaking us. And maybe you should just see this as a positive example. And European competition law needs to be reconsidered, whether it's okay the way it is. There are so many vested interests. You know, there are some countries with a lot of steel industry, and then there are other countries with something else. And this is why we have all those fights and struggles. But, you know, competition law at the latest for the European elections needs to be revised, because we don't have time to waste, don't have time to lose. And I just read about the BDI president, Rosworm, who's also the supervisory board chairman of the AG. And he just described this in a nutshell. He said, look at the wind turbines and how we transport them through the motorway in Germany. We need 150 different permits. If that is right, you just have to transport the wind turbine from one destination to the next. Then you have to say, this is wrong. We have to really do this differently. And this for every single turbine. We have one more question and only 1 minute left. So one question, one answer. Okay, my name is Ludwig Ibach and I work at the University of Hamburg. And I have a question to both panelists. You criticize bureaucracy, both of you. And you also said that you receive public money and that this was very important. How happy are you with private investment activities? Because you didn't already speak about this. And putting it in a nutshell, you know, every euro in public money is also kind of hedging the dividends or securing the dividends. So what is your opinion on private investment readiness? With ThyssenKrupp, for the first time last year, we paid a dividend in many years. So I don't think that we are really suspected of paying out high dividends. And, you know, there always has to be a business case. And if a business case does not work, then you have to wonder, what is the reason for this? Maybe because there is not a level playing field, for example, that energy is less costly in other countries. And this is why there has to be some kind of mechanism to compensate for this. And then private investment decisions can be taken in a different light. Good topic, but let me just give you an example where we stand at the moment. If we sign hydrogen contracts with a company, we're not talking 1 year or 5 years, we're talking about 10 or 20 years. The upfront investment that they engage in needs to be hedged through long-term contracts. So what is the price for that? First question. Second question, who is de-risking? Who is hedging this? You know, that deal, we as a company, no company actually can really secure such a large volume. So we don't have the instruments for this. Does this, is this something that the government does or another company or the banks? You know, as long as this is unclear, when we talk about such amounts, this is not a business case because the business model is still in development. But once it is stable, for example, the automotive industries, they have to use green steel maybe in the future, or shares of green steel in the mandatory way. And then also when it is clear where the hydrogen will come from and what quantities of hydrogen, I believe then one day this is going to trigger a boom, economic growth. I think digitalization is something that Germany is really not good at. And I think mobile phones and AI, we're not good at this either. Other countries have long overtaken us. But when we speak about the decarbonization of industry, green technology, hey, we have great engineers. This should be something that we could do and retain in Germany and then generate growth from this. Perfect final remarks. Thank you very much. Thank you to you all. Thank you to the plenary. Thank you to everyone who joined us on the internet. And also thank you to our two panelists, Daniela Jansen and Tekin Nasikkol. Thank you very much.